Elara moved quietly through the forest, her small hands brushing the dew-soaked leaves as she searched for herbs. The morning mist clung to her cloak, and the birds' chirping seemed softer here, as if the forest itself held its breath. She had grown up on the edge of this land, the village elders calling it enchanted and dangerous in equal measure. To most, it was a place of superstition, but to her, it was home. Her basket filled slowly, leaves and roots carefully tucked inside. She hummed a gentle tune, trying to ignore the strange rustling she had felt since entering the deeper part of the forest. Something felt wrong. Then she saw him. At first, it was only a shadow among the trees. But as she stepped closer, she realized the man was trapped, caught in a net that seemed almost alive in its cruel weaving. He lay on the ground, his armor chipped and torn, a crimson stain spreading across the forest floor. His hair, dark and damp, clung to his pale face. Even in his pain, there was a presence about him, an undeniable strength that made her step back instinctively. Fear gripped her for only a moment. She was an Omega, weak in the eyes of many, but her heart would not let her walk away. Kneeling beside him, she examined the net. The ropes were thick, rough, and held with strange knots that she did not recognize. Her hands trembled as she cut away the bindings, whispering soft words of comfort as she worked. "Stay still," she murmured. "You'll be safe soon." The man stirred, his eyes fluttering open. They were a shade of gray she had never seen before, stormy and sharp, and they pinned her in place. For a heartbeat, she felt as if he could see through her, into the deepest parts of her soul. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "And you're in danger," she replied, ignoring the tremor in her voice. "I can help." Pain twisted his features, but he said nothing more, only allowing her to lift him carefully into her arms. She could feel the weight of him. Not just his body, but the sense of authority and command that radiated like heat from a fire. It made her heart race, though she did not understand why. She carried him to a small clearing she had discovered months ago, a place she had kept secret. Moss covered the ground like a soft carpet, and the light of the early sun pierced the mist in golden rays. Here, she laid him down gently, tearing strips from her cloak to bandage the deeper cuts. "You're strong," she said, her fingers brushing over a wound near his shoulder. "But you can't heal alone." He let out a quiet laugh, bitter and almost sad. "Strong or stubborn?" "Both," she said simply, meeting his gaze. There was something familiar in his expression, a shadow she could not name. "I don't care what you are. You need help." For hours, she worked in silence, tending to his injuries with herbs and poultices she had prepared. The man made little noise, only letting out occasional groans of pain. Yet, each time he looked at her, she felt a connection growing, fragile and frightening in its intensity. As night fell, the forest darkened, and strange sounds echoed from the trees. Elara lit a small fire, the smoke curling upward, and wrapped the man in her remaining cloak. He shivered, and instinctively, she pulled the cloak tighter around him. "Why do you care?" he asked quietly, almost to himself. Elara paused, considering. "Because someone has to," she replied. "Because it's the right thing to do." He remained silent after that, watching her with those storm-gray eyes, and as she fell asleep on the moss near him, exhausted but determined, she did not notice the faint glow that appeared in his eyes. A light not from the fire, nor from the stars. The next morning, he was stronger. He sat up slowly, testing his injuries, and watched her move about the clearing, gathering more herbs. There was a strange tension in the air, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "You are brave," he said finally, his voice less harsh than before. "Not many would do what you have." "I am not brave," she replied, shaking her head. I I couldn't leave you there to die. He studied her, his expression unreadable. And yet, you risked yourself. You are fragile. And yet you act with more courage than most I know. There was a pause, filled only by the wind moving through the trees. Then, he spoke again. Quieter this time. My name is Kaylin. Elara's heart skipped a beat. There was something in the name, a resonance she could not place, though she had never heard it before. I'm Elara, she said softly. Kaylin nodded, his eyes distant. You should not be here, Elara. The forest is not safe, and neither am I. I am here, she said, her voice steady. For a moment, he looked at her differently, as if seeing her, not just for her small size or humble status, but for something more, something enduring and rare. He tried to mask it, but a flicker of vulnerability passed across his face. Then a sudden rustle came from the trees, louder than before. The wind shifted, carrying with it a scent she could not identify. Danger, blood, and something older, darker. Elara tensed, instinctively moving closer to Kaylin. He reacted instantly, pulling her back slightly, his hands firm on her shoulders. Stay behind me, he commanded, his voice sharp. The calm authority in it made her heart pound. Do not step forward until I tell you. Through the mist, shapes moved large, dark, and silent, creeping toward them with an unnatural stillness. Elara's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to run, but something in Kaylin's posture, the way he faced the threat without fear, rooted her to the spot. The shapes stopped at the edge of the clearing. Kaylin's eyes narrowed, and he spoke in a low tone, a language she did not understand. The shapes seemed to hesitate, shifting back into the trees. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, they vanished into the mist. Elara's knees weakened, and Kaylin caught her, steadying her. He looked down at her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Do you see? He asked quietly. The forest. It tests you, and it knows your heart. I think I understand, she whispered. But why me? He studied her, the faintest shadow of a smile touching his lips. Because you are rare, Elara. Most would have fled, or looked away. You chose to stay, to care, and that makes you stronger than you know. Her cheeks flushed at his words, and she looked away, embarrassed and overwhelmed. There was a softness in him she could not have imagined, hidden beneath the aura of command and danger. Night returned to the forest, and Elara fell asleep again, this time closer to Kaylin, who sat watchful, silent, and unyielding. Yet even as he observed, a strange tension pulled at him. This Omega, small and vulnerable, had changed something inside him he did not understand. Something human, soft, and frightening. And in the quiet, under the silver light of the moon, Kaylin whispered her name, almost to himself. Elara. It was a word full of meaning he could not yet name. The forest around them rustled. And in the distance, the faint glow of eyes. Other eyes watched. Kaylin's gaze sharpened, a storm brewing behind his calm demeanor. The danger was not gone, and Elara's bravery had drawn them deeper into a world she did not yet fully see. As the night deepened, she stirred in her sleep, and Kaylin reached out instinctively, laying a protective hand over her shoulder. For the first time in years, he felt a weight he did not resist. A responsibility, yes, but something more. Something that might change him forever. And somewhere in the shadows, a figure moved, observing, waiting, and knowing that the fragile bond between Omega and Alpha was about to be tested. The castle of the northern lands rose like a dark crown against the pale morning sky. Its tall towers pierced the clouds, and the walls, cold and gray, seemed carved from stone itself. Kaylin, now fully recovered, moved through the halls with a quiet authority, Elara following behind. She felt small in the immense space, the echo of her footsteps swallowed by the high ceilings. Kalen's eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, alert to every sound. "This place is not like your village," he said, his voice low. "It is filled with eyes that watch and whispers that judge. Stay close." Elara nodded, her hands gripping the basket of herbs she had carried from the forest. She felt both awe and fear. This was a world she had only heard of in stories. Kings and queens, warriors and plots, power and danger. And yet, she also felt a strange comfort being near Kalen. There was something in his presence that both terrified and fascinated her. They reached a chamber filled with tapestries depicting battles long past. Kalen moved to a chair near the hearth and gestured for her to sit. "You need rest," he said. "You've been through much." 8. Elara hesitated, her eyes drifting to the tapestries. You are the king, aren't you?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. Kalen looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I am," he admitted. "And you have saved me. Do you understand what that means?" I only did what I could," she said, unsure. "I didn't know who you were." He studied her, his gray eyes sharp and calculating. "That is what makes you rare, Elara. Most people would have fled or hidden. You chose to act, even when the danger was unknown." Elara felt her heart beat faster, a mixture of pride and fear. Kalen leaned back, folding his arms. "And yet, what you have done has drawn you into a world you do not yet understand. There are enemies, far more dangerous than the forest you walked through." Ilara's brow furrowed. "Enemies?" "Yes," Kalen said. "Those who wish me harm. Those who see weakness in my moments of vulnerability. And you have been drawn into this as well." She shivered, wrapping her cloak tighter around her shoulders. "I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to help." "Helping is the first step," Kalen replied softly. "The next is survival. And for that, you must understand me and what I am." Over the following days, Elara learned more about Kalen. The man she had rescued was not only the feared Alpha King, but also a ruler who carried the weight of his people's expectations on his shoulders. His reputation was one of ruthlessness. Yet she saw glimpses of another side. A man who could be patient, thoughtful, and even gentle, though only rarely. Kalen, for his part, watched Elara with a mixture of fascination and caution. Her small acts of courage, her insistence on helping him, her refusal to bow in fear, her quiet strength chipped away at the walls he had built around himself. He was used to command, to fear, to obedience. But Elara, she stirred something he had long forgotten: trust. One evening, as the sun bled through the stained glass windows of the castle, Kalen led Elara to the training courtyard. Warriors sparred with swords, their movements precise and deadly. Elara watched, mesmerized by their skill and discipline. "You must understand," Kalen said, his voice low, "that the world outside the forest is not gentle. Power is taken, not given. And those who do not understand this are crushed." Elara swallowed, trying to hide her unease. I will try to understand." He nodded, a flicker of approval in his gaze. "You are stronger than you think. But strength is not only in the body, it is in the mind, the heart, and the courage to face what terrifies you most." Days turned into weeks. Elara helped Kalen tend to his wounds from battles past, to negotiate with neighboring lords, and to uncover plots against the throne. She learned quickly, her intelligence and compassion earning Kalen's respect. In return, Kalen began to open himself to her, sharing small truths about his past. The betrayals he had suffered, the heavy burden of ruling a kingdom that demanded both fear and loyalty. One night, as a storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the castle towers, Kaelin stood at the balcony, watching the rain. Elara approached quietly, carrying a small lantern. "You shouldn't be out here alone," she said softly. "I never am truly alone," he replied, not turning to face her. "Even when I am always watched." Elara hesitated, then stepped closer. "You don't have to carry everything yourself." Kaelin's shoulders stiffened. "I do," he said, his voice firm, but with an edge of vulnerability. "It is my duty. My curse, if you will." Elara placed a hand gently on his arm. "Even a king deserves help. Even the strongest need someone by their side." For a long moment, Kaelin remained silent, the wind whipping through his hair. Then, he turned, and for the first time, his expression softened. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Elara's heart raced. "I am just me," she said simply. "No," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. "You are rare, brave, and kind. The world does not often reward such qualities." The intensity between them was electric, yet unspoken. Both sensed the growing pull, a mixture of fear, fascination, and a longing neither could yet name. But before they could dwell on it, a messenger arrived, breathless and soaked from the storm. "Your Majesty," the messenger said, bowing. "There are reports of movements near the northern border. Raiders, and something else. Strange creatures, unlike anything we've seen before." Kaelin's face darkened. "I feared this," he muttered. "It seems our respite is over." He turned to Elara, his expression unreadable. "You must stay close. This will be dangerous." "I will," she said firmly, though a shiver ran through her. The next days were a blur of preparation and tension. Kaelin's guards doubled their watch, and the castle was fortified. Elara assisted where she could, learning the layout of the fortress and the ways of its people. She noticed, with growing concern, that Kaelin carried a heavy burden, not just the kingdom, but the isolation of being feared by all who knew him. Her presence seemed to soothe something within him, though he never admitted it aloud. One evening, Kaelin asked her to walk with him in the castle gardens. The rain had passed, leaving the air fresh and cool. Lanterns glowed softly along the paths, and the scent of wet earth and flowers filled the air. "You have changed," Kaelin said, his voice quieter than usual. "The court, the kingdom. I am not used to someone being both unafraid and caring. You make me reconsider things I thought fixed and unchangeable." Elara looked up at him, surprised. "Change isn't always bad," she said softly, "even for kings." He studied her, the storm in his eyes settling into something softer. "Perhaps," he said, "but change can be dangerous, especially when it stirs feelings one is not prepared to face." Elara felt a flutter in her chest, a mix of fear and hope. She realized that the bond between them was growing stronger, shaped by danger, trust, and the quiet intimacy of shared moments. But the night held more than words. From the shadows of the garden, unseen eyes watched them. Whispers floated on the wind, cold and sharp, carrying threats and secrets that neither Elara nor Kaelin yet understood. Suddenly, a figure stepped from behind a tree, cloaked and silent. Kaelin reacted instantly, moving in front of Elara. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, his body tense, like a spring ready to snap. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The figure bowed, revealing the hooded face of a spy from a neighboring kingdom. "Your enemies move," the spy said, "and they know of the Omega who walks with you. She is important to him, and they will use her." Elara's breath caught. "Important to him?" she whispered. Kaelin's eyes narrowed, a storm rising within. Then they will pay, he said, his voice deadly calm. No one harms those I care for. The spy left as silently as he had come, leaving an uneasy silence. Elara turned to Kaelin, her heart pounding. You care for me? She asked, her voice barely audible. Kaelin did not answer immediately. He looked at her, eyes stormy yet soft, the weight of his emotions clear in his gaze. Yes, he said finally. But this is dangerous. And yet, I cannot pretend otherwise. Elara felt a warmth spread through her chest, mingled with fear. She knew the path ahead would be perilous. Yet something deep within told her she could face it, as long as she stood by him. The castle loomed around them, shadows dancing on the walls. Outside, unseen threats stirred, waiting for the right moment. And inside, a bond had begun, a fragile, powerful connection that neither of them could ignore. The storm clouds hung low over the northern lands, casting shadows over Kaelin's castle. The air was thick with tension, a prelude to the battle that was to come. Kaelin stood at the balcony, gazing at the horizon where a band of raiders and spies approached, their movements precise, deliberate. Elara stood beside him, her hand lightly brushing against his, both for reassurance and solidarity. This is it, Kaelin said, his voice steady but edged with the weight of command. The threats we have feared are real, and we will face them, together. Elara swallowed, her heart racing. She had never imagined herself in such a place, standing beside a king, preparing to face danger that could destroy them both. Yet, despite her fear, she felt a strange strength. Kaelin had shown her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to face it. The castle gates opened, and the enemy surged forward, shadowy figures slipping through the mist like ghosts. Kaelin drew his sword with a fluid motion, the metal gleaming even in the dim light. His movements were precise, powerful, commanding a king who had fought many battles. Yet tonight, he fought not only for his kingdom, but for Elara. Elara stayed close, watching his every movement, feeling both awe and terror. She was unarmed, but her mind raced with ideas, strategies, and plans. Kaelin had taught her much in these past weeks. How to read the intentions of others, how to notice danger before it struck, and most importantly, how to trust her own instincts. The first of the raiders reached the courtyard, their weapons drawn. Kaelin met them with a calm ferocity that left no room for hesitation. The clash of steel rang out, echoing against the stone walls. He moved like a shadow, striking with precision and power, his every action calculated and deadly. Elara's heart pounded as she watched. She could see the exhaustion behind his eyes, the strain of carrying the weight of command. Yet, he never faltered. In the midst of the chaos, she felt an urge to act not with a sword, but with her mind, guiding the castle guards, helping to barricade passages, and ensuring that the defenders were safe. Through the storm of battle, Kaelin caught sight of her. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment. And in that look, they shared something unspoken: trust, reliance, and a bond that had grown stronger than either had expected. But the danger was not only external. As the last of the raiders fell, Kaelin sensed a deeper threat, a darkness from his past, a curse that had long haunted him. The scar across his chest, hidden beneath his armor, seemed to pulse with an ancient energy. He realized that this confrontation was not only with enemies of flesh and blood, but with the shadows within himself. "Elara," he said, voice low, carrying through the courtyard. "Stay close. You must see this through with me." She nodded, her hand finding his. "I will," she said, her voice steady, even as fear trembled beneath it. Together, they moved toward the ancient temple at the edge of the castle grounds, a place Kaelin had long avoided. It was said to hold the remnants of an old curse, one that had marked his bloodline for generations. Tonight, he would face it, and with Ilara by his side, he felt a courage he had never known. The temple loomed before them, crumbling pillars reaching toward the stormy sky. Inside, shadows danced across the walls, and faint runes glowed with an eerie light. Kalen stepped forward, sword in hand, every sense alert. "Ilara," he said softly, "this is where I must confront what has held me captive all my life. You must trust me, and yourself." "I trust you," she said, her grip on his hand firm. The moment they crossed the threshold, the air shifted. Shadows rose from the floor, twisting into shapes that mirrored Kalen's past failures, betrayals, and the fearsome deeds he had done to survive. Each shadow attacked with both force and memory, echoing the pain and guilt he had carried for years. Kalen fought them with skill, striking with precision and authority. But Ilara stepped forward as well, holding her ground. She did not wield a sword, yet her presence, her calm and unwavering courage, seemed to push back the shadows. She reminded Kalen that he was not alone, that he had someone who believed in him, and that love and trust could be stronger than fear. For a moment, Kalen hesitated, haunted by the memories these shadows invoked. He faltered, and one shadow pierced through, striking near his scar. Pain lanced through him, and he fell to one knee. "Ilara," he called, breath ragged. She rushed to his side, placing her hands over his wound. "You can face this," she said firmly. "You are stronger than it has ever known. Let go of the fear. Let it end here, with you choosing love and courage over anger and isolation." Something in her words, in her unwavering gaze, broke the spell. Kalen rose, not only physically but within himself. He realized that the curse had been bound to his own heart, his fear of vulnerability, his belief that showing mercy was weakness. With a steadying breath, he faced the shadows, but this time with a different strength. "I choose," he said aloud, "to protect, to love, to live, not as a ruler feared, but as a man who is free." The shadows shrieked, twisting and faltering, then dissipated into nothingness. The runes on the temple walls dimmed, and the oppressive weight that had haunted Kalen lifted. He looked at Ilara, his storm-gray eyes soft with awe and gratitude. You did this," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Your courage, your heart, it saved me." Ilara smiled, though tears threatened to fall. "No, Kalen, you saved yourself. I only reminded you of who you could be." The storm outside had passed, and a pale dawn light began to filter into the temple. Kalen pulled Ilara close, his hands steady, protective, and warm. For the first time in years, he felt whole, not just as a king, but as a man capable of love, trust, and connection. They emerged from the temple together, hand in hand. The castle guards had repelled the last of the raiders, and the kingdom was safe once more. Yet, the experience had changed everything. Kalen no longer saw himself as untouchable or feared. Ilara no longer saw herself as fragile or insignificant. Together, they had faced danger, darkness, and the weight of history, and had emerged stronger. In the quiet of the morning, Kalen led Ilara to the castle balcony, overlooking the northern lands. "You have shown me something I thought lost," he said softly. "That even in the harshest world, compassion, courage, and love can change the course of destiny." Ilara leaned against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "And you've shown me that even kings are not invincible, that everyone has shadows to face, and that strength can come from unexpected places." Kalen smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Then we are equals." "Yes," she said, her voice certain. "Equals." But the horizon still held mysteries. In the distance, a horn sounded faintly, carried on the wind. Kalen's eyes narrowed, a shadow of the old wariness returning. "The world is not done with us," he said. "But, whatever comes, we face it together." Ilara nodded, squeezing his hand. Together. In that moment, as dawn broke over the northern lands, a king and his Omega stood side by side, united not by fear or duty alone, but by choice, trust, and love. The kingdom had been tested, the curse lifted, and their bond had transformed them both. And though challenges would come again, they knew that courage, compassion, and the quiet strength of the heart could overcome even the darkest shadows.